Good morning, Year 11. Welcome to Monday's lesson, which is on question 2, summarising from Language Paper 2. Please could you write down the date and title and underline them in your homework books. Thank you. Now, my neighbour is currently putting up scaffolding, so there's a lot of sounds of drilling occurring in the background. I really hope you won't be able to hear them. If you can, please try to block out the noise and focus on the PowerPoint presentation and my explanations. Okay, so today's lesson, you're going to learn or remember how to synthesize implicit and explicit information based on 2 exam specimen extracts. These are extracts made by the exam board to give you a taste of what it will be like in the summer, and you'll summarise the differences between the views presented. We're going to read 2 articles today about natural disasters. One is about an earthquake and one is about a fatal landslide, and we'll write a summary of the differences. Now, you must remember that the first question for paper 2 is a true or false question. You have to decide which statements are true and which are false. To make sure you still remember how to do this, we're going to practice now. Please could you read these 3 paragraphs and select the 4 true statements. Please pause your video to do that now. Perfect, let's check your answers. The correct answers were C, D, F and G. Remember, this is what the question will look like in the exam, and you have to shade in the circle correctly. In all its entirety, completely shade it. If you get a question wrong, you put a cross through it. If you suddenly regret that decision, think, oh, that was the right answer, you would circle it. We're going to quickly recap inference because it's something I want you to practice when you first read your articles. An inference is when you look at clues in the book or the text, you use your own thinking, and voila, you have inference. So let's quickly introduce you to our 2 articles before we start doing some inferring and reading. Source A is a 20th century literary non-fiction extract. So this means it's factual information, it's real life, but it's written in a way so it sounds story-like. And it's an extract from an essay written in 1967 about a landslide. Oh, that's meant to say source B. Source B is a 19th century non-fiction extract, which is taken from a Victorian newspaper published in 1863, and it describes how a minor earthquake had been felt in some parts of Great Britain. Now, when we start reading, I know you don't have the PDF or the document in front of you, but I would like you to try and make some notes as you read. This is a really good example of what you would have to do in the exam. So you need to write down, I think I'm going to ask for, here I've gone for looking at the first kind of paragraph and writing down some inferences. I think it would be useful for you to write down 5 inferences about the place when we finish reading the article. I'll remind you of that in a moment. Let's first of all show you some examples of inferences. So, here, I've reminded again, what is an inference? You can always pause the video if you need to read something more closely, or you can rewind. So, my inferences are listed here, what I've inferred about this town. I'm going to show you how I did that on the next slide. So I looked at some of the language and some of the quotes and I made inferences. Few people had ever heard of Aberfan, so to my mind that suggests there's nothing special about this town. Disaster struck it. This tells me that it was a catastrophic event. It's tucked away, which tells me it's probably quite small and hidden. Its heart was the coal pit, so it obviously really relies on coal mining. And because the railway's decaying, the river's black and it's covered in grime, to me it sounds like a dirty and depressing town. So these are my inferences. I've used clues from the text and my own knowledge. Here's our question. You need to refer to source A and source B for this question. Both sources give details about the places where the events occur. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences between Aberfan and London. Now, it's really important that you look at the focus. We're being asked about the places, not the event. Quite often with this question, The focus I'll ask you to look at has only a few lines of text in the whole extract. So it's making sure you hone in and find those few lines so you can write your summary. At the end of each source, please could you write down 5 inferences you have about the place. This will support you when you actually come to writing this up. You'll have done half of the hard work already, while it's fresh in your mind too. Let's start reading. So for the language paper, I had to remind myself you will not have a reader. Literature paper you do. Language paper, because it's actually assessing your ability to be able to read, you do not. So though I've been reading it to you, I'd like you now to use this opportunity to start reading on your own. You have a copy of the PDF on Google Classroom, and I'll leave this slide here for you. You can pause the video to start reading. Once you have finished reading, please write down 5 inferences about Aberfan. Please pause your video and start reading now. Excellent. You should have read the extract now on your own, and you should have written down 5 inferences about Aberfan. Here is your next source. This one from a Victorian newspaper, set in London, and it's about an earthquake. You have a glossary here as well for any words you may be really unfamiliar with. Please pause your video and begin to read this one now, remembering you're thinking about the place and how it has been presented, and you'll need to write down 5 inferences about this place. Please pause your video and do this now. Super, we can now move on to actually constructing our answer. So it's really vital we keep looking back at what we've been asked to do. It's about the places, about Aberfan and London, the settings, and it's the differences between them that we're looking for. Please could you copy this planning grid into your book. You need to leave at least 2 or 3 lines for these cells and at least 4 for these, depending on the size of your writing. And you'll need 2 of them, please. This is for paragraph 1, this is for paragraph 2. Leave plenty of room on either side to write in here, because you'll have to write a statement, a quote, and an inference. Please pause your video to draw this into your book now. Okay, let's begin. So hopefully you would have noticed that Aberfan is in decline. It's falling apart, it's old and abandoned, well, it's not really abandoned, but it's pretty neglected and unloved. Contrasting, London is a thriving city, it's full of life and hustle and bustle. A different statement that you could use for your next paragraph to show how they are different is Aberfan is quiet and peaceful, whereas London is vast and it's huge. Please could you copy these statements into your book. Now let's look at some quotations you could have selected to support these ideas. To show that Aberfan is in decline, it has a decaying railway, whereas London is busy and successful, so trains rush past. For our second paragraph, to show it's quiet and peaceful, you could use the quotation, "There's a small mining village." Contrastingly, London is huge, so you could use the quotation, "colossal city." Now at this point, you might want to pause your video and try and write some inferences on your own. Have a go at writing some inferences about these quotes. If that's too challenging for your first lesson, then don't worry, I can show you some ideas that I have on the next slide. If you'd like to have a go on your own, pause the video now. Here are my inferences. So the decaying railway suggests to me the town is run down and no one has the energy or care to try to revive it. Contrastingly, trains rush past, I can infer London is busy and alive, it's full of people and is a constant source of activity. For my second paragraph, where I described Aberfan as a small mining village, it sounds gentle and tranquil, whereas London being called a colossal city, I can infer it's huge and it's well known and everybody flocks there. So everybody wants to be in London. You should now pause the video to complete your planning grid if you didn't write your own inferences. Our final activity is for you to see what this looks written up. So you've got the statement, quotation, inference, difference. We all remember SQUID now, or we should do. Here I have used colour to show you the different elements of SQUID. If you prefer not to look at colour, on this next slide here, I've done the same again, showed you the different elements of SQUID, but I've used bold, italics and underlining. So if you'd prefer this slide, you can move forward. I'm going to return to the colourful one though. So we have our statement for our first paragraph. Aberfan is a rural village, which means it's in the countryside. We have our embedded quotation. Few people have heard of it, and it is tucked away in a Welsh valley. Then my green, which is slightly hard to see, it's a bit of a dark green, is my inference. Notice that I've used things like "this suggests," that it is almost hidden from view, and would have been similarly forgotten in history had it not been for the tragedy. Now in purple, I've got my difference or my connective. In contrast, it's really important you remember the connectives to show the comparison. So in contrast, and I've got my statement, London is vast and built up. It's described as a colossal city, which implies it is a huge and filled with activity place, a place that is so large that it should be safe from a natural disaster like an earthquake. So as you can see, there's no language analysis for this. It's actually extremely easy. To finish this lesson, please could you pause the video and copy down as many of these paragraphs as you are able to. Once you have done that, the lesson will be complete. And your lesson is completed. Well done, everybody. Fantastic work. Please do send me your lessons by email. I love having my inbox flooded with emails from you rather than emails about what I should be doing. And it just really brings a smile to my face in the mornings. I hope you have the lovely rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.